Five Nights at Freddy's has been labeled as many things. A horror game, a survival game, and to most people's surprise, a strategy game. This is because FNAF has never been known for being the most difficult game ever, which makes it even more surprising that there is such a rich history of difficult challenges, both officially endorsed and community inspired. Max modes, as they've been called by the inner playing community, are these challenges, setting all characters to their hardest difficulty setting. Max modes have become a staple in the Five Nights at Freddy's series and even in fan projects. These challenges go as far back as August of 2014. Upon completing Five Nights at Freddy's nights 1 through 6, the custom night will unlock. A fun little addition to the game for those who braved 6 whole nights. However, some players didn't see it that way. Instead, they saw it as a way to push the game to its utmost limit. What seemed like a fun little challenge to the few became a phenomenon for the masses. On August 20, 2014, player Big Bug became the first victor of the then infamous 420 mode, Five Nights at Freddy's at its hardest possible difficulty. What followed this completion was something no one expected.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome back to Five Nights at Freddy's. Now I know I said I was pretty much done with this, but somebody by the name of Big Bug decided to do the impossible and beat 2020 mode on this game, man. Oh my god! Oh, I did it!
Markiplier revisiting Five Nights at Freddy's nearly a week after he already completed the game unintentionally started a chain reaction. You see, shortly after Big Bug's initial completion of 420, Scott Cawthon would update the game to give a third menu star for anyone daring enough to beat 420. It were these two events that transpired a need now and forever to complete the game at its hardest. It was no longer about spending 5 nights at Freddy's, it was about surviving and being the best at it. Allow me to take you on a brief history lesson of FNAF's hardest challenges. But first, let me ask you a question. Have you heard of Raid Shadow Legends? Who am I kidding? Of course you have. This video was graciously sponsored by the good people over at Raid, and I'm here to tell you all about it. Did you know that Raid has bosses? One of the toughest bosses in Raid is a Hydra, with multiple different heads, each one a complete boss battle on its own. It sounds crazy, so let's see what we're up against. As I mentioned before, the Hydra has 6 different heads, each with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. My personal favorite would have to be the Head of Decay, as it's all about tearing your team down while also building itself back up. It even has an extra trick up its sleeve with the ability to make your healing items work against you. For new players, you can get your hands on Stag Knight, one of the best epic champions around, as well as a skin for Stag Knight designed by JonTron. Just use the promo code JTSKIN before October 7th. It's as easy as that. Don't worry if you're not a new player, you can still get Stag Knight and the skin through an in-game event. Do you want a free legendary champion? Who am I kidding? Of course you do. Check out Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the mischievous Monkey King, coming as a free legendary champion. All you gotta do is to log into Raid on 7 different days between August 22nd and October 23rd to get your hands on this awesome champion. Just log in and that's it. With all of this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid, if you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get an insane bonuses. We are talking about an epic champion, Drake, from the Lizardman faction, and other useful things like energy refills, skill tomes, and XP boosters. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name SirFiftyFive, and if you're fast enough you can join my clan. So just hit the link in the description and I'll see you on the battlefield. Once again, thank you to Raid for sponsoring this video. I've structured this video into 2 main sections, the FNAF era, where the franchise's hardest challenges were solely from the main series, and the Max Mode List era, where fan games have overtaken the difficulty of the main series, and a full list has been formed in order to keep track of their respective difficulties. As I mentioned earlier, Five Nights at Freddy's 420 mode was considered an impossible task. Hence, when it was completed, it was known as the hardest thing the game had to offer. But what exactly makes it so hard as opposed to something like Night 6? It really comes down to the game's AI. As the name implies, 420 mode has the game's 4 animatronics set at an AI level of 20, the highest possible. While the AI in most FNAF games can be complicated, FNAF 1's AI values work in a very simple way. Let's use Bonnie at AI level 5, a fraction of its difficulty in 420. Bonnie has a movement opportunity about every 5 seconds, which means that about every 5 seconds, Bonnie's AI will randomly generate a number from 1 through 20. If this randomly generated number is less than or equal to Bonnie's AI value, which in this example is 5, Bonnie will have succeeded in this movement opportunity and progressed to his next position on the map. This cycle will continue until Bonnie is at the door. If it's closed and he succeeds in a movement opportunity, he'll retreat. In 420 mode, since Bonnie's AI value is at 20, no matter what number is rolled, he will always succeed in his movement opportunity, since it'll always be less than or equal to 20. This is the same principle with Freddy and Chica, however Chica is slightly slower than Bonnie, and Freddy will move about 2 seconds faster than Bonnie, granted you aren't looking directly at him in the cameras. This brings me on to the next point of concern for 420. As you play through FNAF 1, you learn about a specific character who has a different mechanic than Bonnie and Chica. Foxy the Pirate requires you to consistently watch him in the cameras to avoid him running straight into your office. Foxy has a movement opportunity about every 5 seconds, and he has 3 stages before he leaves Pirate's Cove. His AI works very similar to how everyone else's functions, in the sense that it will roll a random number and compare it to Foxy's AI level. If it's less or equal, he'll progress. However, having your camera up during his interval will automatically fail his movement opportunity, regardless of if the number rolled should have succeeded. So how do you string it all together? There are actually a few ways of beating 420, but I will only be discussing 2. The Big Bug strategy, which was used for the first completions of 420, and the new strategy, which is a lot more power efficient. Starting with Big Bug and his 420 completion, he has an interesting way of playing. Every time the camera is flipped up, Big Bug would shut the right door, preventing Freddy from entering. After his camera flip, he would check the light and open the door if the coast was clear. In between each camera flip, he would briefly check the left door, and then repeat the process. While this strategy proved effective, it wasn't efficient. He was wasting a lot of power just by shutting the door for a couple of seconds to check the cameras. Players around the community later figured out that you didn't have to be on Foxy's camera for his movement opportunity to fail. Players then took this knowledge and applied it to instead focus on stalling Freddy in the cameras. This new strategy would involve the player having the camera always on the east hall corner to stall Freddy, while also keeping Foxy at Pirate's Cove. This essentially eliminates the need to close the right door before each camera flip, which not only makes a full cycle faster, but more power efficient since you don't have to close the door each time. While this strategy is great, it's not foolproof. Foxy still has an opportunity to attack, and will usually do so around 4 AM. This means applying Big Bug strategy for a second to check on Foxy and then resume the cycle. This improvement in strategy has paved the way for runs like Shooter 25's 26% green run to be possible. Years after its initial rise to popularity, FNAF 1's 420 mode has become rather consistent and easy to pull off. This, however, wouldn't be the case for what was to come next. After completely changing the horror landscape forever, Scott Cawthon would try his luck again with a sequel. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, just like the first, featured 5 nights of gameplay, a bonus 6th night for additional challenge, and a custom night. FNAF 2 was also the first game in the series to introduce challenge presets that can unlock rewards upon completion. One of these challenges was the max mode 1020, better known as Golden Freddy mode. Golden Freddy was a massive step up in difficulty from 420, not only adding an additional 6 characters but an entirely new gameplay loop to adjust to. Whether you like this game or not, one thing is for sure, this mode is hard. There are a couple of factors that make Golden Freddy so difficult, so let's break down a complete run. For this we'll be using the right vent camp strategy, but the same core principles apply to any other strategy. The run will generally start out the same, winding up the music box and flicking the mouse down every couple of seconds to check the hallway. When the camera is lowered, it's important to flick twice near the left side of the screen to quickly put on the mask. This is useful for countering the blackout animatronics, as their timings are shorter than ever. 2 of them will come from the vents and 2 from the hallway. After the blackout clears, it's important to leave the mask on for an extra second. Doing this will essentially eliminate the need to check the left vent, as the characters who come through will leave after the mask has been on for 5 seconds. How this works is super interesting to me, and I would recommend checking out DJ Surf's full hour-and-a-half video explanation of how this works. After taking the mask off, flash the hallways for a second and repeat the process. This would be one of the most straightforward max modes if it wasn't for Toy Bonnie, who makes this mode very unfun to play in long sessions. Every character in FNAF 2 has a movement opportunity every 5 seconds. This means the game functions in 5-second intervals, which is why you want to keep the mask on for an extra second to make sure that interval is reached. Toy Bonnie follows this 5-second interval pattern until he's in the vent in your office. Toy Bonnie can take up to 8 seconds to leave the vent, the only animatronic in the game to attack outside of the 5-second interval pattern. On top of this, Toy Bonnie has a blackout animation that appears on screen for a few seconds before leaving. All of this is what makes 1020 so difficult compared to 420. This challenge alone would take its first victors several hours to even make some progress. Believe it or not, this was merely the beginning of FNAF challenges. Scott Cawthon would continue the FNAF series onward, with each installment having its own max mode. But none of them seemed harder than FNAF 2's Golden Freddy mode. After 6 full games in the FNAF series, Scott wasn't done yet, instead slowly teasing a new game with the entire purpose of being a custom night. A final challenge to completely blow every max custom night out of the water. Ultimate Custom Night, as it was being called, was to have 50 characters, each with new and different mechanics. 50-20 mode itself is no exception to the series in terms of it taking an enormous amount of luck and game knowledge. Obviously, I can't explain how all 56 characters work, but I will go into detail about a few of the harder ones and how they were dealt with. Believe it or not, 45-20 can be completed fairly easily, keeping the power generator on throughout the night and only dealing with threats as they appear. But it's when we start adding the next 5 characters things become difficult. The first problem is actually 2 characters. I'm bunching Chica and the puppet as one here since they are dealt with in the same way. They both require the global music box to be on. This is the start of what is known as GMB cycles. Whenever the clock ends with 14 or 44, the GMB is turned on. Whenever the clock ends at 01 or 31, the GMB is turned off and usually replaced with the power generator. It is imperative that the global music box is on for about 15 seconds so that it can be fully wound while also keeping Chica happy. The next issue is Foxy. Just like FNAF 1, he'll start in Pirate's Cove and work his way out towards your office. However, unlike FNAF 1, he shares this area with Bonnie. This creates an interesting dynamic where you're expected to ignore the camera when Bonnie is out while also giving it your attention when Foxy is. This is circumvented with the doll on the desk that will indicate which animatronic is out. Before this, you would never have to worry about it since Bonnie was supposed to be ignored, but with Foxy's inclusion, it becomes another focus. Since the strategy thus far requires minimizing camera flips, it's important to keep this rhythm while also keeping Bonnie on the desk. Obviously, you won't get this lucky with every camera flip, and sometimes you'll have Foxy on the desk. There is a way of slightly delaying the inevitable, and it involves another precise strategy. The 0 frame flip is when you flick the mouse over the camera button in quick succession so the game recognizes the camera up, but doesn't fully load it so no one can kill you. It's a weird strategy, but it works most of the time. Eventually, Foxy will piece himself into your office, and then it's up to RNG if he kills you or not. Foxy is overall a pain to deal with, but nothing that can't be dealt with. Toy Freddy is the next character added, who is one of the most RNG dependent characters in the entire game. During a normal 50-20 run, you'll play his game at the start and forget about him for the rest. This is where even more RNG is involved. Toy Freddy will generally survive a minute before his game ends. From that point forward, at every half-second interval, Toy Freddy has a 10% chance of killing when the monitor is up. Point being, your run could abruptly end near the finish just because of this 10% chance. It's brutal. What's even more brutal is Funtime Foxy, the 50th character in UCN. And while having a simple mechanic is the trickiest to put into a full run, the only consistent way of dealing with Funtime Foxy is by death coining him, entirely removing him from the night. His mechanic is that he'll randomly generate a showtime at some point in the night. You must be on his exact camera at the exact time it starts or it'll cost you your run. This mechanic normally wouldn't be too difficult if it wasn't for the plushie animatronics, who require you to have your camera on cam 2 to properly camera stall them. This means before a minute and 5 seconds you must get 10 fast coins and get the death coin. An ideal run of dealing with Funtime Foxy would consist of getting an Exor spawn at 11 seconds, getting the death coin at around 30 seconds to also deal with Plush Trap, and quickly switch to camera 2 and begin the cycle. 50-20 is brutal overall, and it's no wonder that it took nearly 2 weeks for the first victors to start emerging. 50-20 even today still stands as a massive test of patience and skill, and is still a massive achievement for anyone daring enough to go through and complete it. I would highly recommend checking out some of the first victors' breakdowns of how they completed everything to get the full picture. Even if this is where the main series and its max modes end, there's still more to the story. A little over a year ago, me and 3 other friends created the FNAF Max Mode list. A giant list that was made to organize every single Max Mode in order from difficulty, going from the hardest down to spot 150 where the list cuts off. It's essentially the Geometry Dash Demon list, if you know what that is, but FNAF. Since the Max Mode list's creation, there have been 3 major challenges that have held the top 1 spot. To put into perspective how hard these next 3 are, 5020 currently sits at number 81 on the list, meaning that there are 80 max modes harder than 5020. These next 3 have never left the top 10. The first of which is Twisted 27, Animator's Hell's Early Access Max Mode. Animator's Hell is a fan game inspired by Ultimate Custom Night, taking animators throughout the community and using them in place of animatronics. What separates Animator's Hell from your more traditional UCN fan game is that there really isn't an AI progression system. What I mean by that is characters are either enabled or disabled. There's one difficulty for each character no matter what. I think this is where a lot of the difficulty comes from, as the only way to practice each character is to throw them in with others and adapt. Twisted 27 has all 27 currently available characters active at once, and according to pretty much every victor, it is painful to learn. Like 5020, the only way to get better is to start small and add new characters once you've mastered each mechanic. Unlike 5020, each character has their own unique mechanic that needs to be dealt with on their own time. While 5020 has you actively dealing with maybe 10 characters at one time, Twisted 27 has you managing 27 for 6 minutes. Each character with their own unique movement opportunities and intervals. So different that I could not be bothered going into any amount of detail to describe them. Sorry, but we'd be here for hours discussing all the unique variables and odd situations you could end up in. But to attempt to describe the step up in difficulty from 5020, allow me to point out how many known victors there are of each. It is estimated that there are nearly 1,000 victors of 5020. That's a lot of people who've completed a fairly difficult max mode. Twisted 27 on the other hand, has only 18 known victors. While it could be argued that 5020 is a more known max mode as opposed to Twisted 27, a fair amount of 5020's victors are a part of the max mode list community, or at least know of its existence. So why has pretty much no one, compared to 5020, attempted to complete Twisted 27? Is it too daunting of a task, or are there much harder max modes to worry about instead? Since Twisted 27's reign at the top spot, there have been a couple of modes to push it off, swap, or even raise it. Its actual position on the list is rather unclear, as its placement is entirely determined by its victors' opinions, meaning one player could think it's easier than 5020, and another could think it's the hardest challenge of all time. This is the unfortunate fate of a lot of max modes, regardless of their difficulty. Whenever they're placed, their placement will always be subject to change. As of right now, Twisted 27 remains at number 7 on the list, meaning only 6 max modes have been deemed harder. Each new top 1 that has taken Twisted 27's position at the top spot has been placed super carefully. Usually weeks after a mode's verification is how long it takes for the team to decide the most accurate placement on the list. That wasn't the case for True Nightmare All Challenges. This second major list accomplishment comes from Radiant's team's 5 Nights at Chuck E. Cheese's Rebooted. If you've ever played the game, you'll recall that its custom night has a couple extra surprises. Most notably, 4 new custom night exclusive characters. These characters are what take this already difficult game over the top. Completing True Nightmare, which has all 10 characters, is an impressive achievement considering it's still in the top 50. However, players have found a way to make it even harder. On top of the newly added characters, there are challenges that can be enabled to any custom night mode. Of course, you have aggressive, increasing the animatronic speed, but also power mode, which only gives a small amount of power, which means you're in the dark for most of the night. But that would all be manageable if the night wasn't 12 minutes long. I eventually want to make a video on the crazy amount of game knowledge that has to go into this one to make it even remotely possible. But seriously, this achievement is crazy difficult. Surprisingly, there's one harder challenge. Funtime Gala Very Hard Mode is the max mode for Shooter 25's sister location custom night. If you aren't aware, Shooter has been remaking FNAF's custom nights to feature new mechanics, bug fixes, and a variety of balances. Not only making each game extremely challenging, but also fair. His revision of Sister Location's custom night added a variety of changes, including the addition of Baby and Ennard, who were surprisingly absent from base Sister Location's custom night. Okay, but what exactly makes it harder than True Nightmare All Challenges? Well, it really comes down to skill. While True Nightmare All Challenges does require a lot of skill and game knowledge, it's quite RNG heavy. Getting good munch spawns, keeping costume as far back as possible, and many more mechanics ultimately are largely dependent on RNG. Funtime Gala Very Hard mode is reliant on pretty much none of that and is entirely based off game knowledge. If there was a spot for RNG, the game would have already killed you. I asked Shooter what made the mode so difficult, and he responded with this. Every animatronic is basically super buffed beyond limits. They will spawn and kill really fast, so you need to be really fast and know what you're doing to not get killed. Power is also extremely tight. Almost every victor has died in the last few seconds to it. Not to mention that missing one baby will drain all of it. Although I'm not too familiar with this game and subsequent max mode, considering it very recently pushed True Nightmare All challenges off the top spot, I would very much recommend checking out the verification as well as the MML Discord. It's a super nice community, and they helped a ton with the making of this part. But for the time being, these are the hardest challenges FNAF has to offer. I'm sure in a couple years from now, when pretty much everything I mentioned here has become obsolete, we'll see what's truly possible for this game, because this is just the beginning.